Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the 2025 Suzuki DR-Z, or DR-Z in Canada, 4S. No longer the 400S. This is the dual sport version of this bike. I just reviewed about a week or so ago the Supermoto version, and I said I was going to get to this bike as soon as I could. This is what I've done. We're filming here at Rally Motoplex, where they give me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup, and this one is available here right now as I'm time of filming, and I think it might be the only one left in stock, which was the problem with it was at another dealer. They were out of stock. So these things are selling well here. They're moving through, and this is interesting because it's went through a lot of upgrades. So before we get to what's going on with this bike and my take on it, let's just quickly cover that. We want to thank Rally Motoplex for giving me access to their vehicles. I'm on a mission to film as many 2025 motorcycles as I possibly can, and if you want to help me out do that, you just have to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and the biggest thing that helps my channel grow, which gives me more access to more things, is just find a couple videos you like, watch them to the end. That really helps me out, and that allows me to get more stuff for you. So let's get going with this review. Alright, so let's get a really honest take on this bike. It has been redesigned or rejigged or refigured out for 2025 for one reason and one reason only. Not because you guys have said, hey, it's dated, not because it wasn't selling, because it was. It's been reset up because worldwide emission standards require that bikes like this be updated. This was not a fuel injected bike, although it did have a lot of other sort of modern features on it, even though it doesn't look too modern. But you know, we'll talk about them in a second, what's been updated, that kind of thing. But basically you have fuel injection added, you have an electronic throttle added. Both of those things are done to help meet emission standards. Now, the flip side is when you add electronic throttle, you can add things like ride modes and other kinds of things, which this bike has. And you do step this bike into a new category when you start looking at some of the little tweaks that they made to this bike. So it is still very much a dual sport bike. A lot of people think by the size of it, that 398 or so cc engine, that it's an entry-level bike. And I would say there are better entry-level bikes if you just want to save some money and get an entry-level bike. This one steps it up, especially when you come to suspension, which is a big piece of a dual sport bike. And now again with some of the electronics, it does step it up closer to that adventure bike category from a dual sport. So it is kind of what I would consider maybe the last adventure bike you have to buy before you go to the last dual sport bike you buy before you go to an adventure bike. It's not necessarily the first dual sport bike I would recommend. However, if this is your first dual sport bike, or especially if you have some riding experience, you'll probably really appreciate some of the upgrades in this. So again, it is kind of in that in-between class, above the entry-level dual sports, below the entry-level adventure bikes, and you do have a nice mix of things in there, and people absolutely do adventures on this bike. You've got a tail section here where you can put some racks on, you can get a lot of soft luggage on this bike. People do crazy things. The one reason you wouldn't go adventuring on this bike, fuel tank is a little small, or it's quite small, compared to an adventure bike. So that's one thing to consider, but everything else, kind of a cool bike, and there's a reason it sells well. Let's start at the front wheel and move our way back. So I always say, if you see my videos before, you know that I love to start at the front wheel because you can tell the manufacturer's intent of the bike. Now, I will say these tires, everybody's going to complain about them who's a true off-road person, and that's because anytime a manufacturer makes a dual sport bike, they have to make them road compliant. They know that a lot of people are going to be driving them on the roads. So these are road friendly dual sport tires. You can certainly upgrade to a more mud friendly, dirt friendly, whatever you want to do. And you're going to hear that in a lot of reviews. These are going to be fine for the road. They're going to be fine for light off-road, but the bike is far more capable off-road than probably these tires will allow. So just keep in mind, depending on the type of off-road riding you want to do, you may want to keep some money in the budget to upgrade some tires. That's not exclusive to this. That's pretty common for most dual sports nowadays. But what you do have is a 21-inch spoked wheel, and that means that you can get pretty much any tire you want for this, because you have a 21 and 18. That's what the ideal sizing for off-road tires. That's what everybody makes off-road tires in. So whatever kind of off-road or dual sport type tire you want, you're going to be able to get that on this, and it's going to give you that big rolling circle to help climb over just about anything you want. It's also relatively lightweight, which makes it much easier to climb over off-road things than a typical adventure bike. Now you also have the upside down suspension. That does a couple things for you. Upside down gives you stiffer forks up top. It gives you less unsprung weight down here, but the other thing is this is fully adjustable suspension, and that is really nice to have. You can tweak it and tweak it and tweak it and get it exactly the way you want it for your riding conditions, for your riding personality, whatever you want to do. do. And of course, you also have a single disc brake here, and that is just fine for the weight of this bike, the speed of this bike, and what you're going to be doing with it. So typical stuff in the wheel thing for a off-road type bike. One thing to remember, if you do upgrade tires, make sure they are still road legal tires. Some people will go, oh, I'm going to go really great off-road, but if you get tires that aren't road legal, you can end up causing yourself some problems on the road, including overheating tires. There's lots of things that can go wrong if you don't get the right tire. But there's the front wheel. Let's move our way back. Take a look at the heart of this bike without going into the specs. The thing you need to know in plain language about this engine is, first of all, it's very similar to the previous 400 engine in that it's basically the same block, but they have a highlighted picture somewhere along the line in some of their press releases that show all the components they've changed out for this just to make it a little bit more reliable, make it a little bit more mid-range torque. So they've changed the way the air intake goes, they've changed the way some of the components. One thing they really brag about is some of the lightweight and very smooth componentry in here, like the pistons, that kind of thing, are machined in a different way than some other bikes would be, certainly some entry-level bikes. So you have low resistance in the moving parts in the engine. You have good torque for this engine. It is a single cylinder, so it's a thumper, they call that. I drive a single cylinder 450-ish cc bike right now, perfectly fine for the highway. This one's 400 cc, but it's a higher performance engine. So what you get here is essentially a high performance for the street, and for a dual sport bike, a higher performance engine in that 400cc. So that is good, but you also have legendary reliability. They really haven't messed with anything that should change reliability on this. You can see here you've got a piggyback shock here. There's some adjustment up there, so you've got rear shock adjustment. Everything is pushed forward and low. It's a lightweight, narrow package, and all of that means it's really easy to ride both on-road and off-road. Now, with all of this suspension travel, you're gonna have a higher seat height. Let's take a quick look at that because that might matter to some of you, but let's do that right now. So when we talk about any truly capable dual sport, you have a seat height issue for some people. And the reason why is you want to have long travel suspension, you want to give a lot of ground clearance, and you want to give enough space for someone who's about my size. I'm about 6 feet tall, proportional 6-footer. And if you see me sit on this, there's not as much squat as you would have on something like a Honda CRF300 or something like that. It has a softer suspension. Now, of course, this is adjustable. You can adjust it up the way you want, but you can see for my height here is a nice sort of open leg arrangement that you're not sort of squished up like this, and that's the only really way to lower the seat height is to, if you lower the seat height, you end up more squished up. So if you are worried about a tall seat height, this bike has a tall seat height. Now the flip side is never just look at the specs and say, wow, that's 5 inches taller or whatever many inches taller than my street bike. I'm not going to be able to handle that because this bike is very, whoops, I just pushed my kickstand on my toe, but this bike is very lightweight. It's very easy to control. It also has a narrow seat height and you can move forward on there to get very narrow. So it's not that hard to reach the ground and feel like if just your toes are down, you have security on this bike. Being lightweight makes it both easier to ride at lower speeds, which is what you often do on a dual sport bike, especially off-road. It also means it's great fun around town. That's why they make a supermoto version of this. It's a great fun bike around town. But this thing is going to be ultimately extremely capable. You are comfortable here. Some of these dirt bike style seats, they're all designed to be able to move forward on the seats, which you can do. They're designed to be able to stand up on the seats, which you can do and feel like you're in control. But some of these seats can be rather firm. They can be uncomfortable. I don't find this one to be all that bad at all. It's a perfectly comfortable seat to go on a longer ride on. So again, if you want to adventure on this bike, sure, are there better seats or better adventure bikes out there? There are, but I think you could be comfortable doing those adventure type trips as long as you keep gas stations in mind and nearby, which for a lot of us is still very, very possible. Overall seating position, very square, very much in control. And of course, the big thing is you want to be able to move around on this bike, which you can absolutely do. All right, let's bring it around, show you the dash, show you the suspension adjustments, show you the controls, and go through that. Very quickly here, we'll try to show you the top of the fork tube as we move this handlebars there. You've got adjustments at the top, both there and there, of course, and you've got adjustments at the bottom, so you can get this thing adjusted up exactly the way you want with your front fork tubes. But we're trying to show you the dash here, so let's see if we can get it kind of half lined up and zoom into this. Now, you don't have the most up-to-date dash, but you do have an improvement over the last dash that we saw on this bike. So again, simple LCD display. It says go, I think it's at. I missed that. Anyways, so you've got your gear indicator there. Now this is still a 5-speed gearbox. A lot of people complain about that, but I think it goes to keeping this bike narrow and thin and light and that kind of thing. I've been told that the top gear is revised, or some of the gearing is revised on this bike, so you may have an adjustment there. But you got a gear indicator, you got a fuel gauge there, speedometer. You've got some basic information in here, so kilometers per liter is your fuel efficiency. Actually, we gotta go this side to adjust. No, we gotta go this side. Oh, that's your ABS on and off road. I don't remember how. Oh, of course, yes, what am I doing? This bike has the controls. I was just on another bike that didn't have the controls. All right, so what you have over here is your Suzuki drive mode system. I probably messed that up, but SDMS. So A, B, and C are your drive modes. So we're gonna just go to your drive modes, and there's A. I consider that to be aggressive. I think Suzuki uses different language than I do, but aggressive, more balanced is the B, and more conservative or chill is the C. So you can set that very easily while you're driving. I drove the Suzuki GSX-8R the other day, and very easy to control while you're driving. It has the exact same control, exact same system. So let's keep it in the balance section here. And then your traction control, G is for gravel. You've also got traction control off, traction control 1, traction control 2. So you've got several options here. The traction control 2 is really what you would use in the rain or something like that. Traction control 1 just keeps the wheel from spinning too much. Traction control off, you can do what you want. And the gravel mode allows you to spin that rear wheel sort of to power slide a little bit, but power slide within reason, which is kind of a nice mode to have there. That's, you know, kind of a nice feature. And then when we switch out of the modes, we can switch through what I was trying to do here. So no kilometers on this bike. We've got battery there. Ignore the fuel efficiency, 6.7 kilometers per liter. You can do liters per 100 kilometers, that kind of thing as well here. That's trip B. Then your distance, less than like 700 meters, so less than a kilometer on this. And then trip A, same thing. And then you've got back to your instant fuel efficiency. So you've got good information there. And of course you can turn the off-road ABS on or off. So that turns your rear wheel off, allowing you to slide that rear wheel around as well. All right, let's quickly show you the controls that control this newer dash. All right, so first thing there, I don't know if you saw me flick that switch. You can't even see that switch right there, but I flicked that switch out. That locks your high beams on. If we just leave it set in the center there, it's your regular headlight, and you can flash to pass. So there is a trigger over here that you can push away from you for high beam, pull towards you to flash your high beam, and leave it in the center for everything else. This is what I was using to control the dash. Up and down through the menu system, unless I hit the mode. If I hit the mode, I go to the drive mode. If I hit mode again, I go to the traction control setting. It's very easy to control and very easy to work while you're driving. And like I said, Suzuki uses this on all kinds of things. The V-Strom moving up the line, the GSX-8R was the most recent bike that I drove that I had with it the other day. Very simple to control. I do appreciate Suzuki's use of this control system here. A lot of controls are more finicky than this, harder to figure out. This one's simple. Signals and horn over here. Let's show you the far side for a quick second. Over here you have Suzuki's typical kill switch and start switch. One thing with Suzuki's start switch is we'll try to start it up right now. You hit the start button here and it will turn itself over and over again. You don't have to hold that start switch there. So not a whole lot of noise or fanciness out of this, but again, that start switch is something that happens. Same thing with the clutch lever. If you let the clutch lever out and you haven't given it enough throttle, the electronic throttle can kick in a little bit extra and keep it from stalling. So that's a really nice thing to have, especially on an off-road bike where you might be not paying attention as much, or if you're a newer rider. You also have one thing I really like. You have proper hazard warning lights, which again, on a bike that you could do some adventuring on, I think is very good. You can stop, figure out where you are, check your phone, check your map, check whatever you're going to be checking. But it is nice to have that. I always mention that because it is something that is nice to have on a bike like this. Zoom out a little further and you can kind of see the whole dash there. You've got room to mount things to the handlebars if that's what you want to do, because this is a traditional dual sport. Mirrors are mounted nice and close to you, and they're nice shaped as well to give you some view over your shoulders. So again, very practical bike like that. And now we talk about the controversy. They have fitted a modern light to this that is a single high beam, low beam headlight. It is on right now, but it's not in line with the camera, which is why it's probably hard to see that it's on. Some people are not going to like that look. It's not your traditional look. It is what it is. It doesn't bother me at all. You know, I would say it's fine. It's going to give you the lighting that you need. It's going to give you a reliable light. It's part sharing, and that's what's going to happen in motorcycles. So there's the light. Just thought I'd show it to you while we're here. So let's talk about who this bike is for. The controversy with this bike is with the updates comes an updated price, and no, it's not lower, it's a little higher than before. For some people, they feel like this has moved it out of the class that it was in before. Now, one thing you have to remember with the bike before, it didn't have some of the technology that this bike has, and the other bikes certainly had a lot of used bikes out there which you could go for that were the exact same as the new bike. You are getting something new here, you are getting into a pricier area, and you are having a number of adventure bikes that are coming down in price. There are entry-level adventure bikes these days, which does place us in an interesting category. What I love here about Rally Motoplex is you can really explore the category. Do you want to go dual sport? Do you want to go adventure bike? They have them here as well, and that's something you're going to have to consider. If you want to go dual sport, this is still a great bike here. You can go with a cheaper dual sport, but you're not getting some of the technology, certainly the suspension technology, which is a huge piece of riding an off-road bike. You also tend to have a little bit lower displacement, a little bit less power. So you have to decide the kinds of things that you want in a bike. I think they've still priced it fairly given where it is in the Suzuki lineup, but that again probably has moved it a little bit out of the traditional marketplace that this was in before. Like I said, it gives you some features that do have some value to some people. It may not have value to everybody, and that's where you're seeing the controversy with this bike. Is this a good beginner bike? Yeah, it'd be a fine beginner bike. Is it more than you need to spend for a beginner bike? Probably. Is it more capable than the average beginner bike? Yes, it is as well. So as a dual sport bike, this thing is a bit more of a high-end dual sport bike from Suzuki. What I'd love to see Suzuki do is offer a sort of a rally version of this like Honda does with the CRF300L. Give it a little bit bigger fuel tank, and I think this thing would eat that CRF for lunch because it's really got a lot of features that are really nice, and it could do a little bit more adventuring if you had that. However, as is, still an excellent bike that's definitely been updated. Not too much to be changing the character of it. It still fits that original character of that first bike. We got a plane taking off here. But I do think it is an excellent bike to recommend for people looking for a quality dual sport that you can keep for a long time. So there's my review of the 2025 DR-Z or DR-Z if we're here in Canada like I am. 4S, I have to keep looking at that because I always want to say 400S. It's the 4S. So there you go. If you want to see more of this bike, let me know in the comments below. If you have questions, let me know as well, and we'll talk to you in the next one.